I interviewed someone who was a Stanford medical school professor who's out there and worth talking to, by the way. And
You're talking about Garry Nolan?
That's exactly who I'm talking about. He's effectively an expert witness in these cases, so he's an expert in brain injury. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Entirely credible person. Checks all the boxes that I care about. He's the most highly credentialed person at the university, practically, at Stanford Medical School. We consider that a big deal. And he's worked on this for over 10 years, assessing the injuries to U.S. servicemen from being in close proximity to these objects or having contact with these objects. And his conclusion, as you know because you've talked to him, is that there's some kind of energy coming off here that scrambles people's brains or kills them.
Here is that very man, Garry Nolan from Stanford University Med School. Mr. Nolan, that had to be pretty cool when Joe Rogan's like, "You talking about Garry Nolan?" He said, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That had to be a pretty cool moment.
Well, Joe has been trying to get me on his show for a while, and it's not that I don't want to go on. There are just some, let's say, PR issues that I have to deal with first.
Is that professional related PR issues?
Professional. Yeah. Truly professional.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the guy.
I hope you get him figured out. But you did talk to Tucker. What did you say to Tucker Carlson that convinced him, whatever you convinced him of?
Well, I mean, first, we need to separate two things. One is the Havana syndrome aspects that he was talking about at the moment. And I think what convinced him in that particular case was that I had spoken with many of these individuals as many as 10 years ago about the Havana syndrome issue and the damage. But I had brought with me evidence. The people are always saying, well, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Well, the evidence was the MRI scans of some of these individuals' brains and what we had seen there. I mean, that was what convinced me in the first 30 minutes when these people who said that they represented the CIA and the aerospace company showed up in my office unannounced. And so, when you see damage like that in someone's brain, you can't help but feel the empathy that for these individuals who've gone through it. And then there's a sort of a second level of empathy, and this is what that congressional hearing that happened last week, I think, brought out, was that these people are being ignored. I mean, who wants to tell the truth about what it is that you've experienced and then ended up with extreme damage and then have somebody laugh at you in the face? Now, what was interesting about that and the entire story around that is that although the majority of the individuals that I had in our first bucket had Havana syndrome, there were about 15 or so at the end who'd also experienced damage who had claimed to come close to or have contact with basically UFOs. And, at the time when this happened, it was really my first interaction with anybody about this. And I actually thought it was a huge joke. But it wasn't until I got further and further into it and asked for more and more evidence, and then it was provided to me, that I realized, well, whether or not UFOs are real, the experiences that some individuals go through is certainly worthy of listening to, and a psychological trauma that they've gone through is worthy of listening to. And these aren't just, and not that it should matter, these aren't just people off the street. These are servicemen who, in the course of their work protecting our country, are people who are being laughed at, and not just ignored by the populace, ignored by politicians and the Department of Defense. That's just, in my mind, unacceptable.
Yeah. So it's this,
I think that's what resonated with Tucker.
Totally. So this Havana syndrome, I just assumed it was the Chinese just driving by with a truck and just shooting gamma rays or something, I don't know, inside the CIA headquarters of I just stopped it there because that makes sense enough. But you're suggesting that there's perhaps extraterrestrial interaction happening.
No. So let's separate it. At the beginning, we got about 100 or so cases in what was called at the time the weird bucket, because people didn't know what to do with them. And when enough of them had been collected, they came to the attention of individuals within the DoD that says, there's a pattern starting to show up here. Let's investigate it. They ended up coming to me because my laboratory develops blood analysis tools. And so they wanted, in the course of a full medical workup, to be able to look at the deep understanding of what was going on in the blood from an inflammatory standpoint. But the process of science is that you classify, you bin things into like and like. In that case, about 85 or so of those patients ended up being what we later understood to be Havana syndrome. So we literally saw the first, I think, of the Havana syndrome cases. The remaining 15 were these UFO-like cases. Now, those first 85, yes, to your point, the People's Republic of China or Russia had these, we now know to be weapons, as revealed. But it turns out that we have them as well. And so, just to finish up with that aspect of it, that then became a national security problem that luckily I didn't have to deal with, because that then became something that the Department of Defense and the CIA have been looking into deeply. And actually, a colleague of mine by the name of David Relman, who was the chair of the National Academy of Sciences Oversight Committee that actually looked into and wrote a report on this. And so he's actually in one of my former departments here at Stanford. But it was the 15 remaining. I mean, like I'm a scientist. Once something's solved, I'm less interested in it. It's the unsolved things that drive me forward. And so it was those that then got me interested to understand. And I actually went out and interviewed several of these patients directly to sort of get their body language truth of the matter.
What do you, in your mind, what are we talking about? Like, what are they, what do these aliens look like? What are they, where are they from? What are you envisioning?
That's a huge question. And, I work with a lot of the people in the IC intelligence community. I'm extremely close to a lot of them, including people who've claimed to work on the program. And the long and the short of it is very few people actually do know what it is. It's still a pretty large mystery. And if there's anybody who does, they keep it as deeply secret as anybody can. But I mean, whatever it is, it's quite clearly a technology. It represents a technology that can do things that we cannot. Whatever it is has probably been here for as long as we've been civilized. I mean, just think about it for a second. They didn't just show up because we can see them. They didn't just show up because we have cameras. There's evidence of this going back literally thousands of years. And if you're a civilization that has, let's say, transcended our abilities from a physics or civilizational standpoint, it didn't just happen 100 years ago. It probably happened 1 million years ago. I mean, the universe is 14 billion years old. Plenty of time for stuff to evolve, develop a civilization, and end up spreading across the galaxy. It doesn't, I mean, even we, at the current rocket limitations that we have, let's say 10,000 miles an hour, you can do the calculations, we could fill the whole galaxy in only 5 billion years, right? But if the universe is 14 billion years old, there's plenty of time to do that. So there's plenty people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and others who say, oh, well, they don't exist unless you bring me an alien asteroid. Well, frankly, aliens should be smarter than smoking. But second, the amount of time that it takes to accommodate moving around the entire galaxy is trivial compared to the amount of time that the galaxy has been around. So they're probably here for a long time, and I don't think that they even care about us all that much. People talk about it as if we're the center of the universe. Well, they've probably got other stuff to do, and we're just part of a zoo that they keep tidy every once in a while.
Tucker, and I don't know if this came from you, but Tucker talked about underwater beings or forces. Have you looked at that?
Right. Yeah. So Rear Admiral Timothy Gallaudet, who actually is an advisor to the Sol Foundation, which is something that I started here at Stanford to look into all of this and basically bring a level of academic credibility to the matter. He has written, actually, he wrote a piece about it. It's on our website, about USOs, unidentified submerged objects. And, there's innumerable examples of things that have been seen by the military moving underwater at, near hundreds of miles an hour. And that's just something that we can't accomplish. They're seen. There was actually an incident where something was bumped into. They're observed by merchant ships coming out of the water. This whole idea of transmedium travel, something that goes from the water out. Now we see that, and let's say in our own conventional sense, if we shoot a missile from a submarine under the water, out of the water. But it's very rare that you see things go in that aren't a crash. And so this whole idea of transmedium, something that can move from water to air, air to space, is something that, frankly, we just don't have. And the last time I saw it was Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea when I was a kid, as the TV show, The Flying Submarine, right? We don't have anything like that.
We only got about 1 minute. My last question for you. What do you do and what do you suggest others do? As you, Garry Nolan, you're walking around Stanford University Medical School, and they say, oh, there goes Garry Nolan. Garry Nolan, he's amazing at his biomedical engineering, immunology, whatever. But man, that guy's a nut. That guy believes in aliens. What a crackpot weirdo he is. What do you say to that, and what should we all do with that?
I say I welcome it, first of all. It doesn't bother me one little bit, because I know I'm right. But the point is, I'm not making a conclusion. Right? The whole idea in science is it is about the data. If I can convince another person that the data is real, then that individual and I can have a conversation about what the data means. It's when people come to conclusions that they make the mistake, because I can come to the conclusion that it's, aliens from Alpha Centauri. Well, no, Gary, it's not. It's aliens from Zeta Reticuli, right? So I'm wrong. Or it's something. So you just don't come to a conclusion. You get and at least for scientists, you get them interested in the data. If they're not interested in talking about the data, okay, fine. There's plenty of other people. But I go to Harvard, give talks. I go to Yale, go anywhere. I'm telling you, they come to me and they say, "Hey, at the end of your talk, Gary, would you please talk about the alien stuff?" Everybody wants to hear about it. It's well past the point. And Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, and any of a number of others have really been the workhorses in this and have brought it across the line where it's actually allowed to be talked about without being laughed at.
Where can people learn more about you and follow up on everything you're doing?
Well, you can go to my lab's website. Look me up on Wikipedia. You can go to the Sol Foundation website and learn about our efforts there. And I'm on any of a number of podcasts and other things. I'm going to be giving a talk to the Commonwealth Club up here in San Francisco, which has pretty wide audience around the world. And I'd also recommend that you look up Avi Loeb at Harvard and the Galileo project that he's got going on there. He's the former chair of astronomy, a good friend, and he's sort of my alter ego on the East Coast. So we have Harvard and Stanford professors interested in this. And frankly, a lot of others. I mean, my email fills up literally every day with other academics saying, thanks for what you're doing. I'd love to help.